I'm actually really excited for this fight. And the reason why is I think it pits a really good wrestler against a really good striker, right? You talk about Cheyanne and the way she came on the scene with Dana White's Contender Series. That Hillary Rose fight, what I loved about it was the footwork, right? She was moving so well. The striking was so crisp, and she was doing so much damage there that when she got it to the fence, the ability to use her clinch, get it to the ground if she wanted to do some ground and pound. But that Muay Thai, the boxing up against the fence, she looks so crisp, right? Then you go into the debut against Montserrat Ruiz, and it's like the wrestling was really tested. I thought she did an amazing job defending that early on in the fight, but then it got to the third, and you really saw, Montserrat really wear on her, and there's some really good beef coming out of that fight. So there's a lot of, like, the reason why I'm so excited for it is because you have like a next chapter to it, even with a win or lose for Cheyanne Buys, and I think she's a great chance in this fight. And the reason why is because the Hillary Rose fight, when she's given the opportunity to showcase her striking, she looks really good. And the one thing I do want to say is I thought her wrestling against a Mexican multiple time national champion was really good. I thought that she defended well. If you look at the end of, the first round, I thought she was looking pretty good. And that second round there's just moments where, you go back and watch the tape. I think that Ruiz was a fighter that people kind of, had a sprinkle on, especially against Amanda Lemos, but there's a reason that she was finding so much success before, and it's just not finding the ways to defend those takedowns from, she would really lock up the upper body and flip you over. It was really good to watch on the regional scene, but now it's the UFC, and I think that there's ways of defending that a lot more. And you're seeing that, especially with such good strikers like Lemos. So with Buys going into this fight with kind of that animosity there, a lot of good fire, I think she's been putting a lot more time into her strength and conditioning. And she's very much primed for a big career. I think 2021 could definitely be her year. And even in terms of like the damage she took in that Montserrat fight, you look at the striking totals, right? 136 total strikes landed for Ruiz, but only 15 were significant strikes for the whole fight. So, not only was that fight hella close, but it has some bad blood. So, I mean, because she lost, it'd be tough to sell Buys on winning this fight and then going and fighting her. But maybe she's got some bad blood there after the spitting incident that she posted on her Instagram. But I'm really liking this fight for only because, we've seen, Gloria de Paula in a pretty competitive fight. And the thing about her is, shoot box style, right? So that striking is just going to come in with ferociousness. And I think that she looks really, really good. But then you look at the way Jinya Frey really kind of neutralized that in the first and third rounds of their fight. The second round was almost like Jin being like, you know what, let me just go ahead and test out my striking and just see how good I am against this absolute beast. And then the third one was like, okay, that was fun. Nice little sparring session. Let me get this back to the ground and win the fight pretty handedly. So for me, it's fairly obvious that even with that 71% takedown defense for De Paula, for a Brazilian fighter, when you sometimes assume that BJJ background would just kind of be there a little bit for them, she just had zero answer. There were no get-up opportunities, not even much transitioning from even Jin. It was just a lot of neutralization. And I think that's a check mark that Cheyanne Buys is definitely putting on her list, because I think when it comes to the groundwork, when it comes to the clinches, especially if it's working its way to the ground against the fence, she's probably got that in her bag. The areas that you want to be careful in is, as much as Cheyanne Buys likes to go into the clinch areas and do a lot of her striking in close, these knees, these elbows, these big punches that De Paula is going to get very famous for as a UFC fighter are going to be what she wants to look out for. Because the one thing that I really love about her is that when you look at the way some of these strikers throw, the Jinya Frey fight's a perfect example, right? Looping hooks. A lot of strikers, you'll notice when they're trying to either get something going late in a fight when they're kind of tired, or they don't have that specific background in boxing or Muay Thai or anything where the striking is such a big focus, you notice that she's coming straight the whole time. That's what De Paula needs to do in this fight as well. Talk about keys of victory. I think that lack of loopingness and just straight to the target, as they say, Bisping loves to say, from point A to point B, I think that's what's really going to help her kind of secure a victory here, because the wrestling is obviously what she's trying to avoid, good jabs and good knees up the middle to avoid that, level change, leg kicks to slow Buys down. And be able to inflict some of her own damage on the feet, because if you can get a fighter to slow down in terms of footwork, all of a sudden they're more of a stationary target. And I think in this fight, that has to be the goal for her. She does not want to get up against the fence against a very, clean and not bloodied and not worked in Cheyanne Buys, because I think that leaves the opportunity for the fight to get to the ground pretty open. Whereas, a bit more of a beat up Buys who can't really use her footwork, is getting tired and just feeling that pressure in the clinch. Well, back against the fence, landing big knees, big elbows. I think that's a great opportunity for De Paula to do some serious damage. So, we don't get to see some of these, I'm not going to say elite fights, but, this is a main card opportunity for a classic shootbox striker versus a, pretty solid wrestler that has the exciting style of wrestling that we just talked about with Ronnie Lawrence. That's the part I'm excited to see for Cheyanne Buys. I think that she has the ability to keep herself in the game when it comes to striking, despite many people probably counting her out. But it's that wrestling, and it's that opportunity to do her damage and get the fight to the ground and really have a way with someone that we've kind of seen get neutralized completely. Like there was just no opportunity there for her really to do anything. And so without further ado, I think it's time to take a look at some lines. And for me, I'm really going to lean with Buys being a favorite here. I just think that the striking that we saw against Hillary Rose tells us that there's an opportunity for her to be in this fight, the footwork especially. So if she's avoiding a lot of the damage coming her way, that's the key to success anyway, whether you're a stand-up fighter or a ground fighter. And her, I guess, edge in the ground fighting and maybe even some of that clinch work, as a wrestler and as a grappler, should give her a favorite line. And I think that something around that -160, -170 makes sense. I think this could close closer to a pick'em, especially with weigh-ins, but we just haven't seen enough out of Gloria de Paula to give her any bump as a complete MMA fighter. I think she's coming in as a very raw shoot box style of fighter with striking that you want to fall in love with. So without further ado, let's take a look. I mean, guys, am I on fire right now or what? So -150 for Cheyanne Buys it. I mean, she's actually moving up into that -190 range. I see her as a high of -195, -197, and a low of about -166 in some places. But De Paula opens the +130. You can get her as high as a +168. But seems to average out about a 145 to a +140, and some areas getting to a +150. So I think we broke that one pretty clean, and it's just going to come down to how well Cheyanne can keep up with the striking of De Paula, especially early in the fight. And then if she gets those opportunities to get the fight to the ground and find those opportunities to control the fight, similar to Jen. So I'm excited for it. I think that there's a lot of skill to be had in that fight, similar to the Montserrat Ruiz and Cheyanne Buys fight. And I think that these girls having the opportunity to meet again just makes it a little bit more exciting for that to happen. So let's see how that one goes.